It was a bright, sunny afternoon in Oakwood Hills. That's the name of my neighborhood, a small, quiet place where houses sit close together and kids ride bikes down the street. Most people here are nice. They wave hello, water their grass, and don't bother anyone. At least, that's what I thought. My name's Jake, and I'm just a regular guy. I'm not super tall or super strong or anything like that. I just like plants, flowers, bushes, little trees. I love them all. They make me happy. So a few weeks ago I decided to build something cool in my front yard, a little garden wall. Now this wall wasn't big or fancy. It was just some bricks stacked up, about as tall as my knees. I added some pretty flowers on top, yellow ones and red ones to make it look nice. I worked hard on it, carrying those bricks one by one, wiping sweat off my face, and smiling every time I stepped back to look at it. To me it was perfect. It made my yard feel like home, but not everyone liked it. Oh no, there was one person who hated my wall from the very first day she saw it. Her name was Karen. Karen wasn't just any neighbor. She was the boss of the Homeowners Association, or HOA for short. That's a group of people who make rules for the neighborhood, like you can't paint your house purple, or you have to mow your lawn every week. Karen loved those rules. She loved them so much, she carried a clipboard everywhere she went, writing down anything she didn't like. She'd march up and down the street, her shoes clicking on the sidewalk, her eyes squinting at every house. If your trash can was out too long, Karen would knock on your door. If your dog barked too loud, Karen would write you a note. She was like the queen of Oakwood Hills, or at least she acted like it. That sunny afternoon, I was outside, putting a few more bricks on my wall. The sun felt warm on my back, and a little breeze made the flowers wiggle. I was humming a song, feeling good, when I heard her voice. "Hey you!" Karen shouted. Her voice was so loud, it made the birds fly out of the trees. I looked up, and there she was, standing on the sidewalk in front of my house. Her arms were crossed, her face was red, and her clipboard was tucked under her arm like a weapon. "What do you think you're doing?" she asked, pointing at my wall. I wiped my hands on my jeans and smiled. "Hi Karen," I said. "I'm just building a little wall for my flowers." I thought maybe she'd say something nice, like, "Oh, that's pretty." But nope, not Karen. She stepped closer, her eyes getting all narrow and mean. "That wall's too tall," she barked. "It's against the rules. You can't just build whatever you want, Jake. This neighborhood has standards." Her voice got louder with every word, and I could see a few neighbors peeking out their windows, wondering what was going on. I took a deep breath and kept smiling. "It's not too tall," I said. "I checked the rules. It's fine." But Karen didn't care about that. She shook her head so fast her hair bounced. "No, no, no," she said. "I'm in charge here, and I say it's wrong. You better take it down, or you'll be sorry." Then she turned around and stomped off, her clipboard swinging like she was ready to fight someone. I stood there, watching her go. My smile stayed on my face, but inside I was annoyed. Really annoyed. Who did she think she was, telling me what to do with my own yard? It's not like my wall was hurting anyone. It wasn't blocking the street or scaring the kids. It was just bricks and flowers. But Karen acted like I'd built a giant monster in my yard. I wanted to yell back at her, but I didn't. I just picked up another brick and kept working. Why? Because I had a secret. A big, juicy secret that Karen didn't know about. And trust me, it was going to change everything. See, I wasn't just some guy who liked plants. I'd been watching Karen for a while, Not in a creepy way, but in a smart way. I'd heard things, little whispers from other neighbors, stories about how Karen wasn't as perfect as she pretended to be. She thought she could boss everyone around, but I knew something she didn't. Something that would flip her world upside down and make her wish she'd never yelled at me about my wall. I wasn't going to tell her yet, though. Oh no, I was going to wait for the perfect moment. And when that moment came, Karen wouldn't know what hit her. As I stacked another brick, I thought about how this all started. A few months ago, I moved to Oakwood Hills. It was my first house, and I was excited. I wanted to make friends, grow my plants, and enjoy my new place. Most people were friendly. They'd say hi, or bring me cookies to welcome me. But not Karen. The first time I met her, she told me my mailbox was the wrong color. I laughed and thought she was joking. She wasn't. From then on, she watched me like a hawk, waiting for me to mess up. And when I started building my wall, it was like I'd waved a red flag in front of her. She couldn't stand it. But here's the thing, I wasn't scared of Karen. Not one bit. She could yell all she wanted, wave her clipboard, and make her mean faces. I didn't care, because I knew something was coming, something big. Every time she bossed me around, I just smiled and nodded. I let her think she was winning, but deep down, I was counting the days until the truth came out. And when it did, oh boy, Karen was in for a surprise. Karen didn't stop after yelling at me that first day. Oh no, she kept coming back, every single day. It was like she made it her job to bug me about my little garden wall. I'd be outside, stacking my bricks or watering my flowers, and there she'd be. She'd stand on the sidewalk with her phone, snapping pictures of my wall like it was some kind of crime scene. Click, click, click. The sound drove me crazy, but I didn't say anything. She'd mutter stuff under her breath, loud enough for me to hear. "This wall is a disgrace to the neighborhood," she'd say. "Or you'll be sorry, Jake. Just wait." Her voice was sharp like a teacher scolding a kid who forgot their homework. I didn't argue with her. I'd just look up, nod my head a little, and keep doing what I was doing. Stack a brick, pat the dirt, water the flowers, smile. That's all I did. See, I knew something Karen didn't. I wasn't breaking any rules. Before I even started building my wall, I got the HOA handbook, that big book of rules she was always waving around. I read every page, every word, and guess what? My wall was fine. It wasn't too tall. It wasn't in the wrong spot. It didn't break a single rule. I checked 3 times, just to be sure. But Karen didn't care about that. She didn't want facts. She wanted control. She wanted everyone to do what she said, no questions asked. Every day was the same. I'd wake up, eat my cereal, and head outside to work on my yard. The sun would shine, the birds would sing, and then bam, Karen would show up. Sometimes she'd bring her clipboard and scribble notes while staring at my wall. Sometimes she'd call her friends on the phone and complain about me, loud enough for the whole street to hear. "He thinks he can do whatever he wants," she'd say. "This wall is ruining everything." I'd hear her and just keep stacking my bricks. One time, she even measured my wall with a tape measure, huffing and puffing like she was some kind of detective. "Too tall," she shouted. I didn't say anything back. I didn't need to. I knew the truth. But then one afternoon, things got worse. Way worse. It was a hot day, and I was outside with a big glass of lemonade. I'd just planted some new flowers, little purple ones that looked so pretty next to the bricks. I was proud of my wall. It was starting to look really nice. I sat down on my porch to take a break, sipping my drink, when I heard her shoes clicking down the street. Click, click, click. I looked up, and there was Karen, marching toward my house like she was on a mission. Her face was redder than a tomato, and her arms were waving around like she was trying to fly. She didn't stop at the sidewalk this time. Oh no, she crossed the line, literally. She stepped right into my yard, her feet stomping on my grass. "Jake!" she yelled, so loud, I almost dropped my lemonade. This has gone too far. I stood up, brushing dirt off my hands, and watched her. She pointed at my wall like it was the worst thing she'd ever seen. "I'm calling the cops," she shouted. "You think you're so smart, huh? Building this ugly thing? Well, we'll see about that." Her eyes were wild, and she was breathing hard, like she'd just run a race. I didn't yell back. I didn't even frown. I just shrugged my shoulders and said, "Go ahead, Karen." My voice was calm, like I was talking about the weather. She froze for a second, staring at me. I guess she thought I'd beg her to stop or get mad. But I didn't. I just stood there, sipping my lemonade, looking at her. She smirked a mean, sneaky smirk, like she'd already won a big prize. "Oh, I will," she said. "You're in big trouble now, Jake. Big trouble." Then she pulled out her phone, dialed a number, and started talking loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. "Yes, hello, police. I need you here right now," she said. She kept glaring at me while she talked, like she was trying to scare me. But here's the thing, I wasn't scared, not even a little bit. Karen thought she had all the power. She thought calling the cops would make me rip down my wall and say sorry. She thought she could boss me around forever. But she didn't know what I knew. Something big was brewing, something huge. I'd been keeping it quiet, waiting for the right time. And now, with Karen standing in my yard, yelling about cops, I could feel it getting closer. She was about to step right into a trap she didn't even see coming. See, I'd been talking to the other neighbors. Not loud talks, like Karen did, but quiet ones. Little chats over the fence or while getting the mail. They didn't like Karen either. They told me stories, things she'd done, secrets she was hiding. I listened and nodded, putting all the pieces together like a puzzle. Karen thought she was the queen of Oakwood Hills, but she wasn't as smart as she thought. Every time she came to my house, every time she snapped a picture or shouted at me, she was making it worse for herself. And I wasn't worried about her calling the cops. Not one bit. Because something was about to happen, something that would turn her perfect little world upside down. I watched her stomp back to the sidewalk, still talking on her phone. "Yes, it's an emergency," she said. "This wall is dangerous." Dangerous. I almost laughed. It was a pile of bricks with flowers on top. But I didn't laugh. I just stood there, sipping my lemonade, letting her think she was winning. She had no idea what was coming. She had no idea that her big plan was going to fall apart. And me, I was ready. Ready to watch it all unfold. Ready to see her face when the truth came out. Because this wasn't just about a wall anymore. It was about Karen. And she was about to learn a lesson she'd never forget. The next day started like any other. The sun was up, the sky was blue, and I was outside with my watering can. My little garden wall looked so nice, 3 feet tall, made of bricks, and covered with happy yellow daisies. I sprinkled water on them, watching the drops shine in the light. Everything felt peaceful. But then I heard her. Karen. She was back again,
pacing up and down the sidewalk by my house. Her shoes went click, 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 and her voice was loud, way too loud for a quiet morning. She had her phone pressed to her ear, talking fast. "Yes, officer, it's an emergency," she said. "This wall is a danger to everyone." I stopped watering for a second and looked at her. An emergency? A danger? I couldn't help it. I laughed a little. Not a big laugh, just a quiet one, under my breath. My wall wasn't dangerous. It was 3 feet tall, barely up to my waist, and the daisies on top made it look friendly, not scary. It wasn't falling over or blocking the road. It was just sitting there, minding its own business. But Karen didn't care. She kept talking, her voice getting louder. "Someone needs to stop him," she said. "Come quick." I shook my head and went back to watering my plants. Splash, splash, splash. I acted like nothing was wrong, like Karen wasn't even there. She could yell all she wanted. I wasn't going to let her ruin my day. I hummed a little song and moved to the next flower. But while I worked, I kept one eye on her. She was pacing faster now, back and forth, like a dog waiting for a treat. She'd glance at my wall every few seconds, her eyes all, "You'll see, Jake," she muttered. "You'll see." I didn't say anything back. I just kept watering, letting her think whatever she wanted. Then something weird happened. I heard a car, not a loud car, with sirens or anything, just a quiet one, rolling slow. I looked up, and there it was, a police car. It wasn't flashing its lights or making noise. It just crept down the street, sneaky like a cat. I stopped watering and watched. The car didn't stop at my house. Nope, it kept going, right past my yard, and pulled up in front of Karen's house instead. 2 officers climbed out. They were tall, wearing dark uniforms, and they didn't look happy. They started walking toward Karen's front door. Not mine. I squinted, trying to figure it out. Why were they over there? Karen had called the cops on me, right? So why weren't they coming to my wall? I put my watering can down and leaned against my wall, curious. The daisies tickled my arm, but I didn't move. I just watched. The officers knocked on Karen's door. Knock, 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 Mike. But no one answered. I guess she didn't hear it, because she was still pacing by my house, too busy talking on her phone. Karen didn't see the cops yet. She was too focused on me and my wall. "Yes, officer, it's awful," she said into her phone. "He won't listen. You need to arrest him or something." She waved her free hand in the air, pointing at my wall like it was a monster. I almost laughed again, but I kept my mouth shut. Arrest me for a wall with flowers? That was silly. I crossed my arms and stayed quiet, letting her talk. She didn't know the real cops were already here, and they weren't looking at me. I glanced back at her house. The officers were still there, standing by her door. One of them pulled out a notebook and started writing something. The other one looked around, like he was checking the yard. I tilted my head, thinking, this was strange, really strange. If Karen called the cops about my wall, why were they at her place? What was going on? I didn't say anything out loud, but my brain was buzzing with questions. Something was up, something big. Karen kept pacing, her voice loud and bossy. "Hurry up," she said into her phone. "This is serious." She didn't even look across the street. She didn't see the police car or the officers waiting for her. She was too busy glaring at my wall. I watched her, then looked back at the cops, then back at her again. Every second felt like it was building to something she'd never expect. I could feel it in my tummy, like when you're about to go down a big slide. I remembered what the neighbors had told me. Little whispers about Karen, things she'd done that weren't so nice, like how she'd yell at people for no reason, or how she'd make rules that didn't even make sense. One neighbor, old Mr. Thompson, said she took money from the HOA, money meant for fixing the playground, and kept it for herself. I didn't know if that was true, but it stuck in my head. Was that why the cops were at her house? I didn't know yet, but I was starting to guess. The officers knocked again, knock knock knock, louder this time. Karen still didn't hear. She was too busy shouting at me now. "You think you're so clever, Jake," she yelled, shaking her phone at me. "Well, the police are coming, and you're in trouble." I shrugged my shoulders and picked up my watering can again. "Okay, Karen," I said, nice and calm. She huffed, like she couldn't believe I wasn't scared, but I wasn't, not one bit. I looked at the cops again. They were talking to each other now, pointing at something by Karen's door. One of them pulled out his phone and made a call. I couldn't hear what he said, but he looked serious. I watered another daisy, pretending I wasn't watching. Karen kept pacing, kept talking, kept glaring. She had no idea what was happening right behind her. Every minute, every second, brought us closer to something huge. I could feel it, like a storm coming, quiet at first, but ready to get loud. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The cops were here, and they weren't here for me. Karen thought she was in charge, but she was wrong. Something was about to happen, something she'd never see coming. And me, I just kept watering my plants, waiting for the big moment. It was close now, really close. The day was getting hotter, and I was still outside by my little garden wall. The daisies looked happy, soaking up the sun, and I was leaning on my shovel, watching everything unfold. Karen was across the street, pacing like always, yelling into her phone about my ugly wall. She'd been at it for a while, telling the police how bad I was, how my wall was ruining the neighborhood. Her voice was loud and sharp, cutting through the quiet air. "Yes, officer, it's a disaster," she shouted. "You need to come now." I didn't say anything. I just stood there waiting. Then all of a sudden, her phone rang. Not the call she was on, another one. She huffed, annoyed, and pressed it to her ear. "What?" she snapped, still glaring at my wall. "I'm busy," she kept yelling, her words fast and angry. "This wall is the worst thing ever, and Jake thinks he can." But then she stopped. Mid-sentence, she just froze. Her face changed, like someone flipped a switch. Her eyes got big, really big, like saucers, and her mouth dropped open so wide I could see her teeth. "What do you mean, come home now?" She barked into the phone. Her voice wasn't bossy anymore. It sounded shaky, like she was confused. She pulled the phone away from her ear and turned around. That's when she saw it. The police car, the two officers. They weren't at my house, they were at hers, standing right by her front door, waiting. Her phone slipped out of her hand and hit the ground with a loud clack. She didn't even pick it up. She just stared, her eyes bouncing between the cops and her house. "What's going on?" she shouted, her voice high and squeaky now. She took off running across the street, her arms flapping like a bird. Hey, what are you doing?" she yelled, as she got closer. I stayed where I was, leaning on my shovel. The daisies swayed a little in the breeze, and I smiled. Not a big smile, just a small. I watched as Karen reached the officers. She stopped in front of them, out of breath, her face red and sweaty. "What's this about?" she demanded, pointing at them. "I called you about that wall." She jerked her thumb back toward my house, like I was the problem. But the officers didn't look at me. They looked at her, and they didn't seem mad or rushed. They were calm, super calm, One officer, the taller one with a notebook, stepped forward. What? Pulled. He looked at Karen like she was a kid who got caught sneaking cookies. "Ma'am," he said, slow and steady, "we've had complaints about you." Karen blinked. She opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. "Me?" she squeaked. "What are you talking about?" The officer didn't flinch. He kept going. "Multiple reports of harassment," he said, "and fake emergencies. People say you've been calling us over nothing, again and again." Karen's face went from red to white, like all the color drained out of it. But he wasn't done. "Oh," he added, "and we found out you've been stealing from the HOA funds." Care to explain? That was it. The big moment. The whole neighborhood went silent. No birds chirping, no kids playing, just quiet. Karen's jaw dropped so low, it looked like it might fall off her face. She stood there, staring at the officer, her hands shaking. "Stealing," she whispered. I didn't." She couldn't finish. Her words got stuck, like she didn't know what to say. I leaned harder on my shovel and grinned a little wider. See, I knew this was coming. I'd been talking to the neighbors for weeks. Quiet talks, sneaky talks, over the fence by the mailbox, in the park. They all had stories about Karen. Mr. Thompson said she took money from the HOA to buy fancy stuff for herself, like a big TV and a new car. Mrs. Lopez said Karen yelled at her for planting roses, even though the rules said it was okay. Little Timmy's mom said Karen called the cops on their dog for barking once, just once. Everyone was tired of her. And me. I listened. I nodded. I wrote it all down in my head. We'd had enough. So, a few of us got together and made a plan. We called the police, not about my wall, but about Karen. We told them everything. The fake calls, the mean words, the missing money. We gave them proof, papers, pictures, even a banknote Mr. Thompson found. The cops listened, and they started looking into it. That's why they were here now. Not for me, for her. Karen tried to talk. "This is a mistake," she said, her voice loud again. "I'm the boss of the HOA. I make the rules. Jake's the one in trouble." She pointed at me, her finger shaking. The officer shook his head. "No, ma'am," he said. "We've got evidence, lots of it. You've been bothering people, and that money, it's gone, and it's in your name." He pulled out a paper from his notebook and held it up. Karen stared at it, her eyes wide again. She didn't say anything this time. She couldn't. The other officer stepped closer. "We need you to come with us," he said. "We've got questions." Karen shook her head fast. "No, no way," she shouted. "This is crazy." But the officers didn't budge. They were calm, like they'd done this before. The tall one put his notebook away and looked at her. "Let's go," he said. Karen's shoulders slumped. She looked around, like she wanted someone to help her, but no one did. The neighbors were watching now, peeking from windows, standing on porches. They didn't say a word. I stayed by my wall, my shovel in the dirt. The daisies looked extra pretty in the sunlight, and I felt good, really good. Karen thought she could boss me around. She thought she could scare me with her phone calls and her rules, but she was wrong. I'd been quiet, but I wasn't weak. Me and the neighbors, we'd caught her. All those weeks of talking, planning, waiting, it worked. Karen wasn't the queen anymore. She was in trouble, big trouble. She turned and looked at me one last time. Her eyes were mad, like fire. I just smiled and waved, nice and slow. "Have a good day, Karen," I said. She didn't answer. She couldn't. The officers took her arm not hard, just gentle, and started walking her to the car. The neighborhood stayed quiet, but I could feel it. Everyone was happy. Karen's reign was over, and me, I'd won, without even raising my voice. Karen didn't give up easy. When the cops told her she was in trouble, she started talking fast. No, 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 she said, waving her hands. This is all wrong. I didn't do anything bad. Her voice was loud, like she was trying to convince everyone. But the officers didn't listen. The tall one with the notebook shook his head. We've got proof, he said, calm as could be. He held up a big stack of papers, white sheets covered in tiny writing. Look at this, he told her. It shows everything. Karen's eyes got wide again, but this time she looked scared, not me. What proof? She asked, her voice shaky. The other officer stepped closer. You took money, he said. Money that was supposed to fix the playground and put up new street lights. You kept it for yourself. Bought fancy stuff like a big TV and shiny shoes. Karen's mouth opened, but no words came out. She just stood there staring at the papers, her hands dropping to her sides. The neighbors started coming out of their houses. First it was Mr. Thompson, hobbling with his cane. Then Mrs. Lopez, holding her little dog. Then Timmy and his mom, peeking from their porch. They all watched, quiet at first, as the officers talked to Karen. Her face went red, then white, then red again. I didn't mean to, she finally said. It's a mistake. But the cops didn't buy it. We've got bank papers, the tall one said. Your name's on them. You can't talk your way out of this. Then it happened. The officers took her arms, not rough, just firm, and started walking her to the police car. Karen twisted her head around, looking at me. Her eyes were like fire burning mad. She glared at me through the car window. As they opened the door, I didn't say anything. I just stood by my wall, holding my shovel, and gave her a little wave. Bye, Karen, I said, nice and quiet. She didn't wave back. She couldn't. The cops helped her into the back seat, shut the door, and that was that. The car drove off, slow and steady, down the street. The neighbors stayed outside, watching it go. No one cheered or clapped, but I could tell they were happy. Karen had bossed everyone around for too long, yelling about rules, making people mad, taking things that weren't hers. Now she was gone, and it felt good. I looked at my wall, with its bricks and daisies, and smiled. It was still there, still pretty, and no one could take it away. A few days later, something cool happened. The HOA had a big meeting. Everyone came. Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Lopez, Timmy's mom, even little Timmy with his toy truck. We sat in the park under a big tree, talking about what to do next. Karen's not in charge anymore, Mr. Thompson said, tapping his cane on the ground. We need someone new. Everyone nodded. Then Mrs. Lopez looked at me. Jake, she said, you should do it. You're nice, and you stood up to Karen. I blinked. Me? I asked. I didn't expect that, but the neighbors clapped and said, yes, Jake, Jake. Timmy even jumped up and down, waving his truck. I laughed and said, okay, I'll try. So guess what? They picked me to be the new HOA boss. I promised to keep things fair. No yelling, no silly rules. You can make your yards however you want. I told them. Flowers, walls, whatever makes you happy. Everyone cheered, and Timmy gave me a high five. My wall stayed right where it was. The daisies kept growing, bright and sunny, and I added more flowers, purple ones and pink ones. People walked by and smiled now, not scared of Karen's clipboard. The neighborhood felt different, lighter, freer, and Karen, she wasn't bossing anyone around anymore. I heard she had to pay back the money she took, and couldn't come to meetings. She stayed in her house, quiet for once. I sat on my porch that night, looking at my wall. The stars were out, twinkling above the daisies. I felt proud. Karen thought she could push me around, but she was wrong. With help from my neighbors, we showed her that being mean doesn't win. Justice was served, and it felt awesome. The sun was going down that day, painting the sky orange and pink. I stood in my yard, looking at my little garden wall. The bricks were neat, the daisies were bright, and everything felt just right. I grinned, a big happy grin that stretched across my face. It wasn't just about the wall anymore. It was about what happened to Karen, and how things turned out. I couldn't stop smiling, because it felt so good to see it all end this way. Karen was loud, really loud. She yelled a lot, waved her clipboard, and acted like she was the boss of everyone. She thought she could tell me what to do, thought she could make me tear down my wall, just because she didn't like it. She thought being loud and mean made her strong, but she was wrong. Sometimes, the loudest people think they're in charge, but it's the quiet ones who win in the end. I didn't yell back at her, I didn't fight, or get mad. I just smiled, waited, and worked with my neighbors. And guess what? We beat her. Karen learned that the hard way. So what do you think? Did Karen get what she deserved? I say yes, she was mean, and now she's not in charge. Tell me what you think down below. Oh, and let me know where you're watching from. Your town, your room, anywhere. If you liked this story, hit that subscribe button. I've got more fun twists coming your way, and I can't wait to share them with you.